Well, I grew up in public service. My parents before me, my mother was a lifelong teacher. My father was a local politician, register of deeds in Corson County, and a postmaster. So we always had it drilled into us as kids that we owed the society something much greater than ourselves. So public service goes back to that family. I was fortunate to together with Tom Brokaw, be selected for Boy State. That's how old I am, or how old Tom is these days. I volunteered for combat engineers, U.S. military, right out of high school. 3 days out of high school, I was in boot camp in Fort Leonard Wood. Later on, I went to school mines, and then between my junior and senior year, President Kennedy made his famous speech, "Ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country." And I responded, I joined the Peace Corps. The very first group ever in the whole nation. And I was the first volunteer in South Dakota. It was a life-changing experience. I was born and raised on Standing Rock amidst poverty, Indian and white alike. We were all physically poor, but culturally very rich. And that great diversity that I grew up with, Indians and whites, Slovaks and Poles, Norwegians and Swedes, and Lebanese who were actually called Jews, it was quite a mixture. People were so unsophisticated, they didn't know what was going on. They brought all their prejudices and biases from Eastern Europe together, and they became Americans. And I think this is what it's all about, to try to bring all of us together as Americans. I worked very hard the last 2 years in Pierre. I worked very hard on education, on health care, on economic development, and most recently, energy. And these are macro issues that need a great deal of attention. But of all of these, education is by far the most important. We need, in this state, what Katherine Johnson, who's our regent from here, calls seamless education. We need to start with our kids when they're little ones, when they're infants, and as they go from infanthood into preschool, and then all the way through the public system to higher education and graduate work, and that has to be a seamless process. I like Katherine's ideas very much, and when I proposed this to the chairman of the Board of Regents just 2 weeks ago, he flippantly says, "Well, a truck driver doesn't become an engineer." Well, I got news for him. I drove a deuce-and-a-half truck in the National Guard, and I became an engineer. It can be done, and we need some vision, and we need some leadership. And why do I think I might become an effective legislator? The people that work with me tell me that I relate to them well. I relate to people that like Ellie. I relate to people that like Stan. And I'm one of those people that tries very hard in the legislature to reach across the aisles and to represent everyone.
Well, Stan, maybe you're a Democrat after all. Many of Ellie's people claim you are. Clearly, your lead is exactly what we proposed the state's Democratic Senate this time around. We proposed taking the interest off that very fund and rolling it for 5 years. And had we done that, had we invested in our children, in our schools, and our teachers, we'd have been well on our way. But no, we invested again in the market. Well, we know what the market has done this year. So that one's probably gone. But that is the basic concept. We have to get to education as an investment, not as an expense. And we have to understand that. Ellie, your 65% formula, this is something that is canned out of right-wing groups in the East. It just doesn't make any sense. It's the state telling a local school board what to do, and that's just not right. We don't need more intrusion in our lives, and it doesn't support custodians, it doesn't support paraprofessionals, so it's just one of these screwy ideas that grabs a figure out of the air and says, all right, all the schools throughout the United States ought to have this 65% formula. It's just very unrealistic.
Thank you.
I proposed in this last Senate session a commission on economic development and prosperity. And this was actually kind of a repeat of a commission that Governor Knight had way back 30 years ago. And he saw the future, and that particular commission, part of what grew out of that was the Ready Fund, later on under Governor Mickelson. But I proposed that commission because I think we have to see the future. I agree with Stan. Our tech schools especially need a lot more attention. They need to be connected to the universities, to the research projects, and there's a lot of us that can do that. And whichever of us gets elected, Stan, there'll be an engineer in the Senate. I also proposed a living wage, and I'm going to push this again. We have a lot of TIFs out here, tax increment finance districts, so we, the taxpayer, encourage business to come in. That's very legitimate. But I think we ought to have some teeth on that. If we're going to ask a Cabela's to come in and give them a TIF, or Walmart or anyone else, then I think we should require that they pay at least the same level of entrance level wage that we, the citizens, pay our civil servants. Down at City Hall, when you start out, you start between $11 and $12 an hour, plus full health and retirement benefits. Now, if we're going to fund the Cabela's of the world, the Walmarts of the world, then I think minimally we should say you should pay just as much as we, the citizens, pay our civil servants. So I'm going to push that again, a living wage concept. And then finally, I attempted an equity infusion fund. And this gets a little esoteric unless you've dealt with small business. But small business really requires equity. And I worked very hard with Jim Meyerhouse to develop this. And we took it through the Economic Development Committee. And really, we don't have the right horses in that office. We need a new group in the Governor's Office of Economic Development that really understands business development from the bottom up. Well, this does not necessarily address counties directly, but and I'm not a tax expert, but you don't need to be to know that when you have a two-legged stool of sales tax and property tax, that's no way to run a state. And in the first session I served in, I proposed a BRAC-type commission for a comprehensive tax review. And I think out of that, then, we'd be able to address all the issues of taxation in the state of South Dakota, including the counties. But that got absolutely nowhere in state affairs. And I would think that if we got a Democratic majority in the Senate, then that might gain some traction.